There is such a thing as addiction to the need for certainty. Certainty in the sense of things that we are familiar with, however, because that's how the mind has come to grips with acknowledging, accepting reality that is safe. That's why a lot of people get stuck in negative behaviors, negative states of mind, even if the outside behavior is not necessarily observably of a negative nature, yet when you see the person in their own space, when the person speaks to you of their innermost concerns and pains and grief-causing states of mind when they're by themselves, or what's really going on internally, it's terribly gloomy, painful, in fact. There's internal suffering there because the person is stuck in a loop. And they can't get out of that loop, that's the thing. Because there's an element of attraction. There's an element of, well, there is a desire for wanting to stay close to that sense of familiarity, of things that are known to us. That's why we like to crystallize the world around us. That's why we like to have things, objects, that are familiar to us, that are reminiscent of things that we've experienced, good or bad, ultimately. On that level, doesn't matter, because we are seeking familiarity, because the mind has convinced itself that that is how safety is gained. An experiment would be just walking. If you have a hallway at home, or a path, you have a short path, it doesn't have to be a long one, or it could be a room. Just make sure your objects, any objects that are on the way of your walking path are removed. Turn off the lights, or just close your eyes as you're walking through the walkway, the hallway. From a state of certainty, see what happens the moment you close your eyes. Suddenly, your viscera, your gut starts coming alive. There's tension there. There's tension in your temples. There's tension in your jaw, in your throat. There's a difference in the breathing pattern. And your mind suddenly becomes agitated. And if you're a person who likes to communicate with yourself, your mind, to calm yourself down, especially if you've had some trauma, all of a sudden that kicks into gear, and now you are in constant communication with the mind, trying to persuade the mind that all is okay, everything's fine. Meanwhile, the agitation doesn't budge, doesn't move, doesn't recede. By the way, you haven't even taken a step. You just closed your eyelids. You're still where you were to begin with. So you open your eyes. You see, oh, okay, everything's safe. But what happened? You just closed your eyelids. That's all. You just turned off the lights. We don't like to grope in the dark. Both physically, factually, in the real world, if you want to call it that, as well as symbolically, metaphorically. So we crave certainty in everything. When you're signing a document, when you're having others sign a document, when you're having people promise you something, agreeing on something, what you're saying, I want certainty. But when we really look at nature, you look at the weather. Right now it's stormy and it's windy. But it used to be sunny. It used to be, or it was sunny and calm, and the trees and the plants were not being tossed around the way they are now. What happened? Can't we just go back to that? That is the mind speaking. That is the mind wanting the safety of the familiar. Remember, the safety in an unhealthy mind comes in the form of familiarity. And that's why oftentimes toxic environments are considered, because of their familiarity, because of their reoccurrence, they are seen as safe, but they're not. For this reason, a person needs to really go deeper, and especially honestly, truthfully, to check in. And that state of being that I described when you close your eyes is what I'm referring to. The inner agitation. In some cultures, in some traditions, in some belief systems, they treat that agitation as a good sign of getting closer to something spiritual or meaningful or authentic. No. That agitation is internal stress. That agitation, in fact, when you really probe into it, it's painful, it's suffering. Serenity has to be there in order for you to gain a better understanding of the truth. It doesn't come out of that commotion. It doesn't come out of that craziness, tumultuous world of what if. Because in our quest, we are trying to look for the jagged edges, sharp edges of certainty. While we're denying what is happening. That is the other aspect of it. Denial of what is happening, which is feeding, which is fueling the inner agitation. That's why you close your eyes and then there's this panic, internal panic, and then you open your eyes, everything's normal. The dog is looking back at you, what's going on? Why are you stressed out? So of course this is not about just closing and opening your eyes. This is about our relationship with the world, with our experiences, with events. Right now, human beings happen to be probably at the people that exist today. Most of us, if not all of us, are geared towards seeking some sense of security, some sense of perfection, in fact, some sense of wanting things to be a certain way, certainty. And what that is saying is, we want control. We want control. We want to control our health. We want to control the headache. You want to control the weather. You want to control nature. You have some mold growing on the walls. Oh, I want to control that. You have aging happening. Oh, you want to control that. You want to stop that in its tracks. The gray hair, oh, I have to stop that immediately. Let me fix that. Let me go after that. Let me go fix that. So we don't know how to work around it or with it. We go on the attack. So we have, like some ancient cultures have said, we have really gone off the reservation. We are detached ourselves from our roots, from nature, from the order of things. So this requires some, not just acceptance of the pain, but there are certain things to really engage our energies and pull ourselves out of a situation, let's say. Otherwise it might end up for some people as accepting whatever's happening, so a mundane state of affairs kicks in, inertia, and no growth takes place. That's not what I'm suggesting. But to work with it, like if a sailboat is moving on the water, it's moving thanks to the wind and the expertise of the captain and all those who are running the ship to move the sail, the canvas in a certain way. And that requires not commotion, not craziness, it requires skills. Skills that don't necessarily always are looking for certainty, but adaptability. It's interesting that in our efforts to control, we have created AI in an effort to control. Well, we cannot control ourselves. So it's self-delusion, perpetuation of that. Meanwhile, the AI itself is far better at adaptability than we are. If an AI system observes a series of events taking place, sooner or later it will adapt. It will take the new data and it will merge it with the old data, and it will come out with a result that will produce optimal outcomes that don't present the negative outcomes or the negative scenarios. If it's a robot that keeps falling as it goes up the stairs, it is calculating and recalibrating the equation so that it can adapt to the environment. If something is coming and hitting it, it will adapt. We, on the other hand, who have created this so-called artificial intelligence, we're still failing. We have systems in place that can allow us to understand life, to adapt to life, instead of seeking certainties. But we don't listen. So now the whole planet pretty much is, everybody's pushing for things like artificial intelligence, self-driving cars. How silly. What is the human being going to do as the car is driving itself? Reading a newspaper? In the car, behind the wheel, but you're not driving? What are we doing? It has to be enhancing the quality of life. Not just to seek safety so you don't feel uncomfortable. No, that means there's no growth happening. Adaptability is also another term, the way I understand it. A way of defining growth. Adaptability equals growth. Also, understanding. So, uncertainty is not necessarily something bad. It's also an opportunity for growth, to adapt to the situations and to grow from that, instead of rushing to the opposite direction to gain some type of a false safety. That's why people go and rely on things or phenomena that are not what they say they are, or what they seem to be. All these institutions that we have, things that we have, ideals that we have, we think that those are it. Meanwhile, the body, the mind is completely decrepit. People want technology, but there is no morality, there's no ethical foundation in them. What is that technology going to be a manifestation of? Whatever's there in us. It's just a thing, you know. It's a tool. It's a thing that's out there. But who's going to use it? Us. We are going to use it. Okay? Well, what if I am corrupt? That thing then is going to serve my corrupted heart, my corrupted intentions. If it's a position of power, it's going to use the power that is now available to manifest whatever is really going on in me. All those inadequacies, all those greedy intentions, objectives that I have had, that's what's going to come out. Versus having a sense of healthy shame. No, I can't do that. No, it's unacceptable. It's beneath me. It's disgusting. I can't do that. I can't allow myself. Well, what if my kids see it? What if those? No. So those are very healthy standards of consideration that maintains us on a course that is constructive, not destructive. So I wish there were, in every university, every robotics company, every AI company nowadays, a special department that really spends a lot of time on understanding ethics and morality, and they go back to the drawing board, as they say, to understand really what that is supposed to do. The sense of healthy, inner, wise, in fact, moral shame, and wise, inner, moral dread or fear or consideration. No, I can't do this because I am able to do it, because what if other generations also do that thing which I have the ability to do now? Would I approve of it then? No, of course not. Those in power before me, when the Nazis were doing these things to people, and then it came out and people found out about it, what did I feel? Horrible. Well, what are we doing now to these people here? A different time period, different nationalities, different races, but we're doing far worse things to people, to each other. So how is that different from the Nazis or anybody who has perpetrated other beings? So you go beyond the superficial, you look at the essence, you look at the absence, in fact, of these very important qualities that those individuals didn't have. The Nazis didn't have the sense of shame because they thought that they were going to be in power forever. Evil to dominate forever. Ignorance to dominate forever. And one of the best ways that the world convinces us that it is a good thing, seeking certainty, is the dissemination of evil in the form of something that's familiar. That's propaganda, basically, by the way. That's how propaganda works. You keep exposing the person to the same stuff, the same influence, same, and soon enough it will become normalized. You introduce words, you introduce themes, etc. when you look around in the world, the internet, before the internet there was TV, television. And the themes of movies, themes of series, themes of episodes that used to play to downgrade the importance of genders, for example, mother and father in a household, shook the family structure in the world. That's why families are in a mess. But we're not getting a time of day. There's always something new coming in to dismantle it even further. So we need certain key foundational structures there for us. And to seek certainty in that, like a child seeks certainty in a family. So there is a value to having some patterns, of course. This is not ignoring it. Even the weather changes. There are patterns there. After winter, after the autumn or fall, the tree is resting. It looks dead, but it's resting. And then the soil is resting. And then the weather patterns change. We call them seasons. There's a pattern there. And then you see flowers on trees. And then you see those flowers turn into fruits. So the pattern is ongoing, is going on. It's taking place, despite the changes. The problem is that we have forgotten to look at these patterns in us, in the way our behavior changes and fluctuates depending on certain events, but above all, depending on our expectations. So the expectations have to be looked at carefully, to be scrutinized, and then to be looked at the whole picture. Your life is part of it. So don't be afraid to go back to the drawing board and to really, sometimes it requires recalibration of your goals, recalibration of your understanding, your views. Because when you expose a public to a series of propaganda again and again and again, you're indoctrinating them. People don't have the old indoctrination centers anymore, you know. The temples, the mosques, the churches, synagogues. You don't have those being as powerful as they were. Now you have other media, other methods of doing that, and a lot more effectively, because you're carrying your temple, your synagogue, your mosque, your church with you in your hand. That's how efficient they made it to be, because television is gone, pretty much. Movies are gone, pretty much. So you have the internet, and that's also morphing, that's also changing so fast. So now you're carrying artificial intelligence everywhere you go. That's why it's improving and adapting to our behavior. Every time you look at a screen, there's cameras looking back at you. It's in there, it's installed to see and to read and to predict. So all of these things, how are they bringing about a sense of safety? Remember, that is the goal, to seek safety, but the means with which we go about looking for safety is wrong, often. So simply because it's a familiar thing, no, it should not be acceptable as something that takes you to safety, or to, because it's certain, yeah? It's an objective, it has edges, it has this. No. It's not going to bring you growth. Wisdom is necessary. Ethics is an absolute must. It's like oxygen for a society. And to belittle that, to minimize that, to say that it is unimportant, the child will grow up without knowing the difference between right and wrong. There is such a thing as good and evil, absolutely. But when you remove those two, the very distinction, to see it, then it means that you've already separated yourself from other people who are enduring those terrible things. That's why people are not studying history as an augmentation, as a support system for that method of destroying civilization. Meaning, if you know history, you can look at your present and then dictate, well, wait a minute, this is very similar to those things over there. Those people did this to us. Now we're doing this to them. So you look back at history, and it starts making you think about what's happening now. You're not living in a vacuum. So history allows us to see that, but there's no discussion on history. Us repeating history. And there's always this so-called newness, new technologies, new this, new news. And that is how the propaganda machine keeps running, and the mind is so confused that it doesn't even have time to look back into the future, or into the past even. And it does not like to take charge of one's life in the proper way. So it seeks out certainty outside of itself, in things, in entities, in structures, in organizations, in ideals, rather than in its own, the person, in their own anchor, which has to be their own wisdom, which comes from a good, solid sense of virtue, which I was referring to as healthy, wise, inner sense of moral shame, and wise, keyword, wise, sense of inner moral consideration and fear. So you don't see yourself as separate, as above, as something superior to the rest of humanity, the rest of existence. You're a caretaker, you're a custodian, you're a steward of a protective part of society to help keep society going in the right direction through your own behavior. And if everyone is allowed to do this, a lot will change. AI will not save us, ever. Our own wise behavior that is strongly influenced by the presence of virtue will do that, will secure for us a certain safe future and a present as well. Because you don't see that in the world. Everybody's pursuing the wrong things because we are being told that those are the right things. No. That's why certainty comes from within, not without.